Genesis 11, verse 1. And the whole earth was of one language and of one speech. This is to be expected, since the world is being repopulated by Noah and his descendants. And it sounds like a good thing that everybody would speak the same language and be able to communicate, but this also enables bad ideas to spread more rapidly, and sin multiplies. We'll see that as we read on. Verse 2, And it came to pass, as they journeyed from the east, that they found a plain in the land of Shinar, and they dwelt there. Now the cultural mandate found in Genesis 1:28 tells mankind to be fruitful, to multiply, and to fill the earth. But here mankind is acting in direct contradiction to that mandate by gathering together and planning to build a large city. The previous chapter, chapter 10, tells us that the mighty hunter Nimrod is the one behind all of this. Verse 3, And they said to one another, Go to, let us make brick and burn them thoroughly. And they had brick for stone, and slime they had for mortar. Technology in and of itself is not necessarily a bad thing. It can enrich our lives in lots of ways. Unfortunately, it also makes it much easier to sin. Sin is very easily accessed on these little phones that we carry around with us in our pockets. Now here they must make their own brick because they are on a plain after all, and there's not a lot of stone laying around. The slime is actually tar that they use for mortar. Verse 4, And they said, Go to, let us build us a city and a tower, whose top may reach unto heaven, and let us make a name, let us make us a name, lest we be scattered abroad upon the face of the whole earth. We see here that the people have an idea that is very similar to the desire that caused Adam and Eve to sin in the first place. They wanted to be like God, knowing good and evil. The citizens of Shinar wanted to build a tower to heaven to be like God's also, to make a name for themselves. They wanted to bring glory to themselves by building a tower that was very visible, an expression of their pride. Now, I once heard a speaker on the radio, whose name I did not learn, who said that the strictest translation would say, altar unto the heavenlies. This would mean that the tower would have been an altar to pagan gods, or perhaps some sort of astrological observatory. In his commentary, Matthew Henry said that some thought the tower was meant to escape another flood, but he dismissed the idea since they would likely have built on a mountain if that was their intent. Whatever the case, the important thing is that they are acting in explicit opposition to God's command. They blatantly and brazenly defied God. God's plan has always been to carve out a special people for his own. God wanted different nations so he could call out from among them a special nation to be his people. Verse 5, And the Lord came down to see the city and the tower which the children of men builded. God, of course, is omniscient. He didn't have to literally come down to see it. But this verse reminds us that God is not ignoring us. He is taking note of everything we do. We are storing up wrath for ourselves for the day of wrath by sinning and rebelling against him. Verse 6, And the Lord said, Behold, the people is one, and they have all one language, and this they began to do, and now nothing will be restrained from them which they have imagined to do. So the common language in culture gives sin the opportunity to spread and multiply and become more and more outrageous. Going back to Matthew Henry's commentary, he mentions Hebrews chapter 10, verse 24 in relation to this passage. That verse says, And let us consider one another to provoke unto love and to good works. Now, what in the world does this have to do with this passage that we're looking at in Genesis? Well, the reverse is also true. If godly people provoke one another to good works, ungodly people provoke one another to sin. Are we not seeing that in America today? Where do the riots happen? Where are there high crime and murder rates? Where are there scores of homeless people? And where are the most godless leaders? In the big cities. Seemingly, the bigger the city, the greater the sin. And major cities are full of tall buildings. Interesting, isn't it? It is remarkable how well the Bible describes the human race and the reality of sin. And it's a perspective we never would have arrived at on our own. We always think we're pretty good folks and that the trend of history is always leading to a better future. Really, the opposite is true. And to be fair here, I guess we also have to consider the megachurch phenomenon. Seems like the bigger the church, the further away the message gets from Scripture. This is not universally true, but it is all too commonly true. And also, if we think about the organizations that govern national denominations, they seem to get further and further away from the truth as time goes on, too. Maybe the small churches are the best churches. It reminds us that we really only have one head, and that is Christ. Verse 7, Go to, let us go down, and there confound their language, that they may not understand one another's speech. To some degree, this impedes sin's ability to spread. Many cultures will result from the one, with varying degrees of depravity. And then out of the nations God will call one to his own. Verse 8, So the Lord scattered them abroad from thence upon the face of all the earth, and they left off to build the city. So God accomplished what he set out to do. He prevented, or at least limited, the evil that would result from their plans. In verse 9, Therefore is the name of it called Babel, because the Lord did there confound the language of all the earth. And from thence did the Lord scatter them abroad upon the face of all the earth. When we rebel against God, we do things the hard way. His will shall be accomplished one way or another.